God's blessings to everyone. This is a DGHradio.com news and information news update for the British Virgin Islands, and I'm reporter EVH reporting the news for Wednesday, October 8th, 2025, covering the latest developments from across the British Virgin Islands. Good evening. We begin with weather and safety. The Department of Disaster Management is urging residents to prepare for indirect impacts from Tropical Storm Jerry as it intensifies and tracks to the northeast of the territory later this week. Forecasters expect rough seas, strong gusts, and periods of heavy rain, especially on northern exposures. Hazardous surf and rip currents are likely. Please secure loose outdoor items, check your boats and coastal properties, clear drains and gutters, and avoid risky marine activities once the swells build. As always, stay tuned to official advisories for precise timing and any changes to the forecast. On infrastructure and economic growth, the government has formally asked the United Kingdom to treat the planned runway extension at Terence B. Lettsome International Airport as an exception to existing borrowing limits. The Premier says discussions with London are underway to ensure financing for the expansion would not be counted as a breach of fiscal ratios. No construction timeline or financing mix has been published yet, but the administration frames the project as vital to unlocking direct long-haul connections, boosting visitor arrivals, and supporting diversification beyond financial services. Supporters point to potential gains for tourism. Critics continue to ask for a detailed business case, clear environmental safeguards, and transparency on how debt would be serviced in a small economy. Also on the international front, at the United Nations in New York, the Premier addressed the Fourth Committee, formerly known as the Special Political and Decolonization Committee, calling for stronger support as the Virgin Islands advances its constitutional review and seeks fuller self-government while maintaining beneficial relationships. At home, the House of Assembly's committee stage work on reform proposals continues, with residents watching for clear timelines, public updates, and practical improvements that translate constitutional text into better service delivery. Turning to governance and compensation, the Premier has responded to chatter about a potential public service boycott linked to lawmakers' salary increases, saying he is not aware of any organized action during Public Service Week. The government emphasizes that broader civil service pay reforms also move forward, while many residents continue to call for side-by-side data that shows the before and after pay bands for elected officials and public officers, the total annual cost, and any impacts on pensions and allowances. The larger task ahead is restoring trust through clearer communication, predictable policy, and a focus on frontline results in permitting, policing, healthcare, and other essential services. To status and immigration policy, after community pushback, the Premier has signaled a possible rethink of recently increased fees for residency and belonger applications. Officials say the principle of updating long dormant charges stands, but they are listening to concerns that the jumps may be too steep for some families and long-tenured residents. Options on the table could include phased increases, hardship waivers, and publishing a transparent breakdown of processing costs so people can see what they're paying for. The outcome will affect families, workforce planning, and the territory's future demographics. Business climate and consumer protection. Trade authorities are defending proof of competence requirements for certain license categories, saying that in fields with safety or fiduciary risks, applicants may be asked for credentials or evidence of experience to protect the public. Entrepreneurs have welcomed the goal of quality, but are pressing for definitive checklists by sector, standardized processing timelines, and an appeal path when applications stall. There's broad agreement that clear rules and faster turnaround would help legitimate startups while keeping standards high. In the House, the tone of debate around constitutional reform remains in focus. The education minister has called for a reset in the rhetoric, asking colleagues to keep disagreements evidence-based and aimed at practical outcomes that residents can feel. In related discussions, the opposition leader warns that any move to a two-chamber legislature will only succeed if the Virgin Islands can recruit respected, skilled people to serve and raise the quality of lawmaking. And looking at capacity inside government, a former junior minister argues the role still has value if it is clearly defined, time-limited, and accountable, especially across heavy portfolios like tourism, trade, and finance. The common thread in all three viewpoints: structure should serve results. On food security and local industry, farmers, fishers, and government officials recently mapped near-term priorities, from land preparation and irrigation to cold storage, dockside improvements, and stronger market links with hotels and grocers. Quick wins, such as fixing specific bottlenecks at known sites, could build momentum ahead of larger capital projects. Long-term participants discussed attracting younger workers through apprenticeships and modern equipment and using better data to manage fish stocks sustainably. Water reliability. Volunteer engineers with Operators Without Borders are back in the territory assisting the Ministry of Communications and Works to install approximately 5,800 feet of 10-inch high-density polyethylene transmission main at Diamond Estate, Tortola. The upgrade targets chronic leakage and pressure issues in aging lines. Residents have emphasized the importance of proper trenching, bedding, and backfilling to protect the new mains. Authorities are being urged to pair this with pump, storage, and metering improvements so the investment translates into steady service and reduced non-revenue water. Let's turn to community safety. The Royal Virgin Islands Police Force is investigating gunfire at a bar in Bawhers Bay, where several masked individuals entered late one evening and discharged firearms. Thankfully, no injuries were reported in that incident. That follows a separate armed robbery shooting near Tortola Pier Park in the early hours of Saturday, October 4th, which left one man wounded. Police have identified the victim as 24-year-old Javante Barnes of Bellevue. He remains under medical care as detectives review footage, interview witnesses, and pursue leads. Officers urge anyone with information from either case to contact the RVIPF or submit tips anonymously. The cluster of incidents has renewed debate about security measures for businesses and the wider community, with calls for better lighting, surveillance, target hardening, and consistent enforcement. Road safety. Police have confirmed an investigation into a fatal traffic collision that occurred in the Paraquita Bay area on the evening of Saturday, October 4th. The major crime team is leading the inquiry, and formal identification of the deceased will follow next of kin notifications. Officers are appealing to anyone who witnessed the collision or has dashcam footage from that corridor to come forward. As always, please drive carefully, especially at night and in wet conditions. Tourism and marine sector dynamics. Approximately 90 charter boats that have been operating out of the United States Virgin Islands are now basing in the Virgin Islands this season, following fee changes across the channel. Local stakeholders expect higher bookings and increased demand for marina services, repairs, provisioning, and hospitality. Regulators will monitor port capacity, anchorage management, and environmental safeguards to keep growth sustainable as activity ramps up for the high season. Community and education. The world's largest floating book fair, the Ship Logos Hope, is scheduled to visit the territory from Friday, October 24th through Tuesday, October 28th. The onboard fair will feature thousands of affordable titles across subjects from science, cooking, and languages to arts and spiritual growth. The volunteer crew typically partners with local organizations for outreach during port calls. Schools and families are encouraged to plan visits and take advantage of the opportunity to expand home and classroom libraries. The Ministry of Education, Youth Affairs, and Sports has also begun its week-long tour of schools, with the minister, the chief education officer, and other leaders joining classroom sessions, reading to younger learners, and discussing needs with staff. Book donations by local authors are part of the push to strengthen literacy and engagement across islands, including remote communities where access to materials can be limited. The visits help align policy with on-the-ground realities and celebrate student achievements. Labor and opportunity. The territory's online labor management system now lists more than 600 vacancies, with officials urging belongers to register, build profiles, and apply across public and private sector roles. Workforce workshops are being offered to help job seekers navigate the portal, polish resumes, and prepare for interviews. The aim is to reduce unemployment, fill skills gaps, and modernize hiring so that employers can find local talent quickly. In financial services, talent development, 26 young people recently completed internship placements across 21 firms, with some rolling into full-time roles. Workshops covered professional etiquette, personal branding, and workplace skills. Leaders say building a robust local pipeline is essential to sustaining this pillar of the economy and reducing reliance on external expertise. Consumer note: a local auto dealership has launched a month-long clearance event advertising significant savings on selected models, complimentary insurance for a year, and low monthly payments. Buyers considering a vehicle should always review the total cost of ownership, fuel, maintenance, and insurance, and verify the terms before signing. Deals can be helpful, but an informed choice is the best protection. Public administration and service delivery. An ongoing debate continues about how to improve the speed and accountability of the civil service. One proposal is to adjust oversight structures so elected leadership has clearer responsibility for results, while others caution that safeguards are needed to prevent politicization. Meanwhile, the Department of Trade says it is preparing recommendations to make business licensing far more efficient, acknowledging delays caused by understaffing and process bottlenecks. Entrepreneurs across districts say predictable timelines would boost confidence and investment. Civic process and elections. An elections reform bill now before the House proposes party and candidate registration, campaign finance disclosure with public donor records, refreshed conduct codes, and a rebranded elections department under the deputy governor. Public education around the 90-plus page proposal is planned as it moves through readings. The goal is clearer rules, greater transparency, and more accessible voting options suited to a small jurisdiction. Back to infrastructure resilience. Restoration of the Ralph T. O'Neill administration complex continues, with design work approaching completion and procurement underway for major systems. The building has been closed since the 2017 disasters, costing taxpayers millions in annual rentals to house dispersed departments. The target is to consolidate operations, reduce costs, and improve public access when the complex reopens. Residents will welcome firm milestones and visible progress as the project advances. Finally, culture and community spaces. There's an active discussion about the Roadtown Market's current vendor mix. Critics say the redeveloped site has drifted from its original mission to showcase local agriculture and culture, with too many stalls focused on imported goods and apparel. Officials say they're reviewing policies and promotional strategies that would increase the share of locally grown produce and handmade items while keeping the market commercially viable. The balance between economic adaptation and cultural preservation is at the heart of the conversation, and constructive feedback from both vendors and shoppers will help shape next steps. That's the latest across the territory this Wednesday. I'm your reporter, EVH, signing off for DGHradio.com. Remember, EVH and DGH. Together we explain, verify, and highlight as we deliver global headlines. Because on DGHradio.com, the news never sleeps. Ciao.